So again, welcome back. Welcome to the orientation session for PSIR. So we have some people online and some of you offline. The purpose of this orientation session is to largely acquaint you with some important aspects. First things first, why is optional important? Second, we'll also look into what's the pattern of the exam for optional, as in how are the questions asked, because it's slightly different from what you are aware of in your general studies paper. And also then I'll just brief you through the syllabus. I won't discuss that in detail, of course, but I'll also tell you the reason why I would want you to see the syllabus is because we would get to know what is the overlap of PSIR with other subjects, and that is very important, right? So it's like, me telling you why should you opt for PSIR. And then lastly, I'll just have a brief on course structure, on what is the course structure is going to be, roughly number of days required to cover this entire program, when it will start, and then I'll open this to questions from you. Okay. So first up, as I said, importance of optional subject for the exam. See, as far as this option is concerned, your GS papers, to be very frank, I would say for any informed person, let's say I'm talking about the top 100, 200 students, largely the score you will get in your GS paper is consistent, maybe plus minus 5 or 10, depending on which topic you're strong at. Let's say somebody is very good at GS paper 1, they might score 120 marks. Somebody at paper 2 would score 120 there. But overall, your GS scores largely do not have the difference or the differentiating factor compared to other sincere and serious aspirants, right? So the focus has to be on three trajectories. The first one, of course, is the ethics paper. Second is essay, and third is optional. Now, again, ethics paper has its own challenges because you cannot really, of course, we can prepare you for ethics and we can train you on the important keywords. We can train you on how to write the case study, how to actually have a structure for case study. But then the problem is that at that point of time, what goes on in your mind, that's something faculty cannot instill. So ethics paper is largely a sum of your personal experiences and the knowledge you have gathered. That is why the marks might differentiate vastly in the ethics paper. And same goes for essay paper also. Again, essay is largely a test of your language skills and also your presentation. So therein you might struggle or you might do very well, depending on how your past schooling or how your last 3, 4, 5 years have been with respect to your preparation. But optional is something you can prepare for. This is the only 500 marks that you can fully prepare for and yet make the most difference in your exam vis-a-vis the other candidates. And we can have a gap of as big as 70, 80 marks in the optional paper. That would mean not getting selected to also getting in the top 100. Right, top 100. Of course, I don't say top 10 because then you have the interview as well, which is very unpredictable. So their marks might differ. But largely, if you want not only your selection to be guaranteed and also to ensure a top 100 rank, scoring around 290, 300 or at least 275 plus in an optional paper is a must. That is mandatory. Otherwise, GS will not compensate for the lost marks in optional. It is always the other way around. People with pretty average scores in GS end up making it into the list. And not only that, they also end up ultimately getting a good rank because of great optional score, right? So as I said, it is going to be your deciding factor for selection. That's number one. And see, as far as success rate is concerned for any option, it is a very general rule of thumb that in any optional, around 10% people are selected, 8 to 10%. It can keep on varying, but even for the most popular ones or the ones which are very unique, that's the same selection rate. Now, Also, most or some of the optional at least will have some kind of overlap in your GS papers. So studying for an optional also helps you get those extra marks if you write a better answer in your GS paper. That's also of help. Now, it would depend on what optional you have chosen. So the help in GS, it can come from various optionals, not just this optional, but there are some other options as well, which can provide you with a lot of help in your GS paper. That's one point. So beyond this, of course, the ultimate idea is to get selected. And as I said, if you score well in optional, your selection is almost guaranteed if you don't mess big time in your ethics and essay paper, right? Okay. Now, the pattern of optional paper is slightly different. So here, we do not really have those 10 questions, 10 marks each, 10 questions, 15 marks each. We have questions divided into two parts. So let's say paper 1. So we have two papers, paper 1. Paper 1 will have two parts. So we have section A and section B. So the point being, you have total of 8 questions, and in each of these sections, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6, 7, and 8. These are 8 questions, out of which you have to solve only 5, not all 8. That's point 1. Okay, unlike in the GS paper, you have to solve every single question. Now, the very first question and the 5th question, these two are mandatory in nature. This means you have to solve these 2 questions. Now, these are worth 50 marks. How? Because they have 5 questions. 10 into 5 questions. 10 into 5 questions. Mandatory. From the remaining 6 questions, you can attempt any 3. But the consideration is that you have to pick and choose 1 from each section. Are you clear? So, 1 from here, 1 from here, and then extra 1 from any of those. Whichever topic you feel is strong for you, you can pick and choose. Clear? Now, these questions 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. So, just take the example of question 2, for example, say. Now, question 2 will have 3 different questions. So, 20, 15, and 15. This is a standard in the recent times. Okay. So, we can have a 20 marker and then 2 15 markers, 30 plus 20, 50. And that's how the entire paper is. 1, 2, and plus 1 from either of these 3. And 2 5 questions, each question of 50 marks with, of course, subparts. Clear? Now, here you will have a 20 marker also. So, slightly longer as an answer, considering you are used to writing 250 words. That's the max you write in a GS paper, right? A 15 marker is how much? 250 words. So, here it's slightly longer. These questions will have to be written in around 300, 320, 350 words, not more than that. There is no exact word limit set, but we don't cross that. So this is the pattern. Are we aware of this pattern now? So this is what the pattern is, and this is going to be exactly the same for paper 2 as well. Same structure. You have 2 sections, section A, section B, and you have those 8 questions, out of which first and 5th, meaning the first question of each section is going to be mandatory, and then the other 6 you can choose any 3. Clear? Mandatory, mandatory. Same structure. So this is something different that you should be aware of when it comes to optionals, that yes, you do have options. Now, you might think then, sir, why don't we only study specific part of the paper? Why then, if we have options to choose, I can skip topics completely, right? That is possible. But the concern are these 2 questions, right? For example, say in PSIR, the first paper is political science, and it is divided into two sections. This one talks about what you typically know as the political ideologies, Indian political thought, Western political thought, right? Second one is about Indian government and politics. So this is all that you have studied in your, say, polity, in your a bit of history, a bit of Indian society. Now, most people would feel that, okay, I could have attempted all 5 questions or 2 from here and skip certain parts here. But these 5 questions are mandatory and they largely cover the entire syllabus. So skipping something could be a challenge, right? We can't skip a big portion. Of course, in any optional, there will be certain topics which do not really have questions, right? So that can be skipped in general, because if they ask you a question from here, you can skip them always, right? So yes, skipping big portions in an optional subject is not advisable, so that plan won't work. You will have to largely at least know everything briefly. Because if you skip something and if it ends up getting here, then that's 10 marks lost. That's a big blow, right? Because we are banking a lot on the optional paper. Clear? So yes, that is one concern. A lot of aspirants do have this issue that they feel that, okay, this could be a great idea. Why not just skip a certain section? But then that does not work well. Okay. This is with respect to the paper. Now, coming to the syllabus, just brief overview. I mean, my point to show this syllabus is just to let you know what exactly would be the topics that you need to cover, roughly. So in your first paper, as I said, you have 2 sections, section A and section B. Then the second paper, which is slightly more on comparative politics and IR, you have section A and section B. So let's come back to the very first section of paper 1. So why I also show this is that you should also understand what am I getting into, right? A brief idea on what are these topics of my interest, or are these topics that I have no clue, no interest in knowing, etc. So you start with the very generic, how you start any kind of subject, the meaning and approaches, normative approach, empirical approach, etc. Then theories of state, okay, so various categories of state. And then justice, a very important aspect in our topic is justice, especially the Raoul's theory of justice. Of course, we will also cover Amartya Sen's approach. Then equality. So same old social, economic, political, affirmative action. We are getting questions from reservations as well. Then rights, again, human rights, the origin of rights, the concept of rights. Democracy, the various types of democracies. The one that we have in our country, which is what is called representative democracy. The other one is referred to as the participatory democracy, right? Any example of what would mean by participatory? Do we have that in our country? In any form? Where people can directly take part, is that possible? Anywhere? People directly taking part in decision making at any level? That is representative, because we represent somebody on behalf of us. But we do have something at a very lower level. Think slightly. Gram Sabhas are a classic example of what? Participatory democracy. But anyway, so we'll be covering those things. Then concept of power, again important, hegemony, etc. Political, now these 3 are important. Of course, others also, but these 3 are topics where you'll have to have some solid command over your subject, because knowledge gathered from these 3 political ideologies, like say Marxism, liberalism, feminism, etc., right? And also Indian political thought, Arthashastra, Dharmashastra, Ambedkar, Sri Aurobindo, Gandhi, right? All these people. The knowledge acquired here, even from the Western political thought, say Marx, right? Gramsci, etc., Aristotle, all these people, the Locke, Hobbes, the knowledge acquired from here will have to be used in your answers everywhere. So slightly longer as a topic also, and important as well. Okay, so this is what you will encounter in your first section. Clear? Now the second section is something that you would know very well. You have to cover almost everything mentioned here in various parts of your GS. So Indian nationalism, the national movement, right? That same old Satyagraha, NCM, CDM, that's a part of your main syllabus, which will have questions, right? Then making of the Indian Constitution, sounds familiar? The Government of India Acts, Charter Acts, all those things. Then salient features of the Indian Constitution. This is a direct polity-based topic. Principal organs of the Union, principal organs of the state. So the parliamentary structure that you have to cover. Then grassroots democracy, the local self-government, just like polity. Okay. Then statutory institutions, commissions like ECI, NCW, NCM, right? Bodies like NHRC, Finance Commission, CAG, exact polity syllabus. Okay. And then federalism, center-state relations, again the overlap. Then some economics thrown in, like planning and economic development. Then you have your paper 1, which is what? The GS paper 1, that thrown here through caste, religion and ethnicity in Indian politics. Then party system, back to paper 2, and then social movements, environmental movements, again, a bit of overlap in GS3 as well. Okay. So you see that this paper is something that you have to cover anyway. Now, of course, let me just clarify. The difference would be that you would use your information and knowledge you have collected from here and then use those terms, use those thinkers, etc. to write a better answer here. So what maybe could be an answer of a polity student, your answer will be slightly better than that because it is well-rounded. It has a lot of weight because you are quoting some thinkers, philosophers, etc. Right? So yes, it might not be that basic because you would slightly have to write slightly different and slightly better answers here. But then the advantage is it would reflect directly in your GS papers also. All the knowledge you acquire is directly going to reflect in GS paper. Okay, we'll come to that later on. Then the second paper is comparative politics, section A, and section B is the typical Indian foreign policy that you know. So in comparative politics, you talk about the state in comparative perspective, politics of representation, globalization, deglobalization, right? That's the new norm nowadays, deglobalization. Then approaches to studying IR, key concepts in IR. We constantly have questions on key concepts in IR, changing international political order. We are constantly pushing for multipolar world, right? We have constantly seen India traveling here and there, Argentina recently, and that is what we are pushing for, a multipolar world. It's no longer from bipolar to unipolar and now multipolar world. Then evolution of the international economic system, the UN, the regionalization of world politics and contemporary global concerns. And then comes the hardcore Indian foreign policy. So this will talk about India and how our foreign policy is shaped. So Indian foreign policy, the contribution to NAM, we still get questions from NAM and the relevance of NAM, that is non-aligned movement. Then India and South Asia, India and Global South, India and the global centers of power, extremely important. You keep on getting the same 3 countries, India, USA, India, China, India, Russia, over and over again. Okay. So India and the global South, meaning, the Latin American countries, Africa, etc. Then India and the UN system. And then India and nuclear question. We know very well, we are also nuclear power with our neighbors. What is our policy, right? What is their policy? What should the global order be, right? We have our neighbors with nuclear weapons. Should we still have no first use policy, or should we simply change our structure and follow first use like Pakistan, right? And then recent developments in Indian foreign policy. Here you can look into aspects like the developing India-Israel relationship. It has questions consistently on how India and Israel have had a very strong bond And again, questions from India, Israel also. So some countries, of course, you keep on getting questions from there. Like, as I said, China, USA, Russia, and Israel. And otherwise, some smaller cases thrown in here and there. So this is your rough, brief syllabus. Clear? And now comes the more important factor. And the important factor is why this subject. So first up is the idea that this subject is, I would say, it relies a lot on conceptual clarity. And once you understand something, then it is always going to be easy. So this relies on a sense of concepts, which once developed will be difficult to forget unless you don't revise ever. That's one point. Second, of course, is your, I think the single most reason why people choose this is the GS overlap, because no other optional has this kind of overlap, right? That is, I think that is a main reason. And of course, because of this is the other reason also that you see a lot of toppers. Not just this year, previous years also. Every year around 4 or 5, barring couple of years, every year 4 or 5 students in top 20, sometimes in top 10, have this optional. Of course, it makes sense only because, apart from it getting you marks here, it also has an overlap in GS. So that's again there. Let's come to this first, the GS overlap, and see it thoroughly as to what kind of overlap are we expecting here. So this will give you generic idea on various theories of state, also concept of power and political ideologies, right? Marxism, liberalism, feminism, Gandhism, etc., which can then have a reflection in what? In two things. Number one, your essays, as well as your GS paper 4, part 1, ethics. The first one. Apart from this, there are certain case studies also which focus on these issues. Case studies can be categorized into 3 or 4, where one such case study is also about your inherent values. And you can use pointers from here, you can use thinkers from here in your GS paper, in your essay paper to score heavily. Give that edge which might be missing in your peer and their answers. So yes, apart from it, the same concepts can also be incorporated in your GS paper 1. In fact, we saw last year around 9 questions were asked from Indian society and social issues. Out of 20, 9 questions. That was a very big number, considering that paper 1 also has topics like history and geography. They were sidelined completely. And knowledge of these things here gives you an edge in writing or attempting those answers also. That's an important point, right? Okay. Apart from this, let's also look at what exactly is, most of you would know, the GS paper 2. In fact, the entire GS paper 2, barring some aspects of social justice, is all political science and IR. So be it the salient features, principal organs, grassroots democracy, statutory institutions, everything is there, including federalism, center-state relations. So this is primarily your 90% polity. So of course, once you have covered polity, this is all going to be easy for you, and we'll give you added information, which you'll use here and also in your polity answers, which sadly your peers, your colleagues might not be able to because of lack of information. That's one advantage, clear-cut advantage, right? There's no denying this fact. Apart from it, we also see the very first 2 topics, which are Indian nationalism and making of the Indian Constitution. So in these 2 topics, again, the same story continues. Some overlap for history, that is GS paper 1, GS paper 1 and 2 as well. Then planning and economic development, this paper 3, some overlap there. Caste, religion and ethnicity, we are back to paper 1 of GS. Party system, we are moving to paper 2. And social movements, women's movements, environmental concerns, 1 and 3, you switch between these two. So now I'm referring to, again, GS paper 1, of course, GS paper 2 in its entirety, then some portions of GS paper 3. Not the technical science and tech and disaster ones, of course, but a bit of it. So that's there. And if you move on to IR and especially the second part, this is your IR syllabus for GS paper 2, right? Everything is covered. So this would be, again, UN, regionalization of world politics. You have questions from these. And evolution of the international economic system, Bretton Woods to WTO. We do have questions from WTO in our GS paper as well. We have questions from changing international order as well. Plus, you'll have more detailed information on how things are, including a very interesting topic nowadays, which is globalization, right? So the entire paper 2, I would say 80 to 90% of it. Why do I leave the rest? Is because of this topic called social justice. Even though we do have to cover things like pressure groups and all, but still, right? Let's assume that some scheme or program could be very topical in nature, which we might not cover under PSIR. So when you study PSIR, the biggest advantage that any aspirant can expect is this only: the coverage of GS thoroughly, at least paper 2 and some portions of paper 1, and yes, direct help that you will get in your essay as well as your ethics paper, especially with your essays and the format changing drastically. That's also there. Okay, so this is one thing. And now, as I said earlier also, toppers, most of the toppers in the last 5-10 years have chosen this optional, and the reason I think is because of this overlap of GS. Everybody who starts their journey of preparation, the first thing that they have in mind is that do I need to study an option separately, or will there be some overlap? So amongst all the, I would say, big 4 or rather big 6 also, so that people choose this the most. Then you have others like anthropology, sociology, right, and geography. So these are the top 4 subjects chosen by aspirants in terms of number of people who appear for the main exam, right? Okay, because those who don't clear the prelims, then there is no point. But those who appear for the main exam, top 4 by far, and then 3. Then a huge gap, and then we have 2 optionals, PubAd and history. So yes, PubAd is still popular, not that popular of course, it has come down drastically. Not because of overlap, but because of the kind of questions being asked in PubAd. That has become slightly tricky nowadays to solve. So these are the big 6, and you can see very well that no other subject comes closer, close to what the GS overlap that PSIR has. Right, so that is one clear-cut advantage, and that is why I think it reflects also in these people getting slightly better score in their essay paper, especially. Right, I'm not saying you don't have to practice for essay. Yes, you have to. The structure, the overall presentation, that is required, but the additional help that you'll get from here is going to get you those extra 15-20 marks. Getting a 140 score in essay, that would be amazing, right? So yes. Now my point is, see, what could be a realistic score in PSIR? A realistic score could be any score of over 275. It's a genuinely realistic score for which you have to have consistent effort. It is not that, this is a bit too much. What did I quote suddenly? Magical score. No. We have seen people scoring over 300 also very easily. Very easily meaning putting in the effort. So this is a very, very realistic score that you can get. Most people would end up getting with, say, slightly above average effort. Okay. Beyond this, now, why would you take PSIR except this point? If this was not the case, then why would you take PSIR? I mean, of course, it would help you in winning those debates on your tea stalls also. Having the knowledge of political science and quoting those terms will always impress people. That's there. And also IR. I think IR is a favorite topic of a lot of people because of how things are and how we have been a part of globalization. But see, frankly, if you do have basic writing skills and you love to understand things better, then this is one option for you. It may not require too much of mugging up, so it would need some writing skills as well as a bit of conceptual clarity, a bit of understanding. So if these are things that you feel are my forte, that no, I love to understand compared to mugging up information then reproducing it, then I think this is an optional meant for everyone, right? And which also reflects in the number. So I think one optional that nobody would want to sell too much is PSIR because it needs no push. It is only for the aspirant to decide whether I should opt for this or not. Now, one concern that might be there for this optional would be vast syllabus compared to, say, some other optional which have smaller syllabus. At least these two have a relatively smaller syllabus. That is definitely correct. But then how do we understand this? So the context would be to know what exactly to study. I don't want to question on how much time does it take for others to say study and cover this particular subject. I'll just discuss my course structure shortly. But the real concern is knowing your previous year questions. If you have a grip, I think the same thing was said by me in the polity classes also, right? If you know your previous year questions thoroughly, you know very well what to expect and what to study. And in that sense, the time required is not that much, frankly. And the syllabus is not that vast, especially if you can have a strong command over these three. Once these three are covered, of course, after this, then everything falls very, very smoothly. And this section, we are just going to revise and give you additional pointers. That's it. When I say discuss, say, grassroots democracy, you know very well the entire structure. You've covered that in polity. So we'll keep on giving you additional points. That's it. So this does not really require much of an effort. Again, when it comes to the first part here, some kind of theory, some kind of mugging up, and then this would all be implementing what is there and what you see on a daily basis, right? So this again, either you study this and you can simply skip on the IR class also for GS. It won't be required, frankly. The only thing that you'd have to learn is to write the 10 and 15 marker questions in your GS paper. Otherwise, not at all. Everything is covered. In fact, way more is covered, right? So in that sense, as I said, you are not going to invest too much of time. Syllabus might seem big, which it is also compared to at least the smaller ones. Of course, not as big as history and all. History is slightly way more vast. But otherwise, the syllabus is not that vast. That is one misconception people have, that this syllabus is vast. It might take 7-8 months. It won't. So how will our course structure be? We would be expecting this course to be over in around 350 hours. So we are planning to start this on 15th of September. Sharp, that day itself. No delay, no extension. And we would end our entire course by 31st of January. Of course, plus minus 3-4 days. Nothing more than that. This is our entire course structure going to be. In this, we have incorporated some holidays like, the typical Gandhi Jayanti and the typical Dashera, Diwali, couple of days of holiday. Of course, you'd want your Christmas also and a New Year as well. Incorporating all that, you would have around 3 to 3.5 hours of classes. Some days 3.5 hours and most days 3 hours of classes. It would bring this to around 330 to 370 hours of time that we have in this entire duration, right? So on our first week when we start, we'll have just 2.5 hours of classes, not to make you suffer. This would be the very first week where we'll discuss the topics of political ideologies largely, political theory largely, and then these topics will take slightly longer time, around 50 hours roughly, to these topics. So as I said, first week, and then we'll move on to 3 hours of classes per week. From second week onwards, we will have 3 hours of classes, and on and off we might have 3.5 hours of classes depending on how the topics are. That would be it. So the first paper 1 would take around 2.5 months of time to cover, and paper 2 would take around 2 months of time to cover. And when I say the classes, they are going to be from Monday to Saturday, not just Friday, Monday to Saturday. Okay, this is going to be the very concise structure of what we are going to cover. Clear? In your paper 1, this entire section will take roughly around 45-50 hours, and rest will be for this. Okay. Why? Because once we cover this, we are also going to use a lot of this information here. Clear? And then the remaining hours to this. This is going to be a course structure. Clear? Any issue or doubt here? No doubts. So then, now what can be an expectation that you would have, and what is my expectation from people who join this course? See, the first expectation is to attend the class on a daily basis. And unlike polity, where I largely give everything on printed notes, here we'll have to have some combination. So we'll have a lot of dictation of class notes, which also will help you build some writing speed, right? Because I have known some of you, and I see in general, I can't predict your writing speed, but I see in general writing speed is a concern for most people. And then I will also give you handouts, which will largely be of the topics we discuss, some more elaborate self-reading in case you're interested, so that you avoid purchasing books. Though I'll mention some books that if you want to, but largely I would prefer no need to, because I have those books and I'm not pirating them at all. I have my own notes made from those books, completely different in format. So the books cannot claim that we are involved in piracy anyway. Though Delhi High Court's judgment is very clear on this, that we can use sections of books and print it and give it to students if the idea is to learn and not violate their intellectual property. So that should not be a concern. So I would rather say don't engage in purchasing books for now, unless I tell you specifically, no, this might be the book you require. Okay, so don't. These two are going to be sufficient. Apart from it, we will focus on PYQs here. So as and when, I think for those who have taken my classes, you would know, as and when we cover the topics, we'll discuss the PYQs, right? All the questions that have been asked since 2013. So our first target is going to be PYQs. And in a GS class, one concern is also that I don't force you to write answers. I just give the question. It's up to you to write the answer or not. But here I will use a bit of force to make you write the answer. So that is something that I will do here, because if you leave students on their own, you know very well, you won't write a single answer. So here I think I would have to use force, meaning you'll have to be sitting in the class and writing the answer. That is something I make sure I do. And I will evaluate the answers with you At least for the PYQs, I'll explain and I would expect you to write the answer despite me giving you the structure. And we'll have the usual 1 question per day. That's my standard. So we'll have practice questions. The focus is going to be writing as many answers as possible because it is going to be all about implementing what you are studying. Okay, so you cannot simply come mug up some facts and write in the paper. I would want to see that you are using those facts because this is slightly more different from GS, right? The optional paper is different from GS. You will have to put those thoughts on paper and we have to make sure that those thoughts are aligned to the needs of the examination. It is extremely important. Okay, so that is something that we have to see. It might take at least a month or 2 for you to align your views, but once it's done, you are good to go on your own as well. Okay. So these 2 are my headache completely as to how the questions are and what's the answer going to be like. And the usual 1 weekly test that I will have. So we'll have the weekly test regularly. So every Sunday, you'll have to sit for an optional test also. You can come here, sit in the house, but no cheating is what the expectation would be. So this is something that I expect. Please don't miss out on a single class is my only concern, because I do not teach for 8-9 months because that I feel is a crime against students. You just make them sit for an option for 9 months and give them generic information which they might not use in the exam. My classes are concise. If you skip a class, it can be a concern. So even if you skip a class because of health issues, please watch the recorded videos or whatever. Because once you start skipping classes, we will have a lot of problems. Clear? Also, a lot of students do not want to attend this class. They feel it is just a recap of polity. But no, we'll make this class quite different and interesting. Why? Because I'll tell you how to differentiate between a GS answer and PSIR answer, right? So those 40-45 hours, please, around 3 weeks, so please don't skip those also, because that would be important. It has happened in the past as well that attendance drops down drastically because they feel that no, this is something we know. Trust me, it reflects in your answer, because students would come for the test, but their answer would be of no match to what those students wrote who attended the class. Because you have to differentiate between the answer that any GS person would write compared to a PSIR optional student. So yes, that's my only expectation. Don't miss classes, attend the classes regularly. And as far as books are concerned, I would advise you not to purchase any book for now. Okay, but in case you would want to, you can let me know. I'll tell you what books to purchase. And this is my brief on what exactly I wanted to convey before I begin my class, which would be, not 15th, but we'll have 2 demo classes of sorts for you to get to know the subject primarily, because I think you know how I teach. So it's either you like my teaching or you hate my teaching, right? So that thing is nothing unique, but we'll have 2 classes that would largely be for you to understand that is this subject meant for you, because trust me, it is more important than anything else. However good the teacher, however be the GS overlap, however be the importance and toppers taking it, if the subject does not click with you, then it's useless completely, right? So next week we'll have a demo class on some political science topic. Right, I'll have a not too easy and not too difficult, somewhere in between, so that you get to know that this is something that is almost the same experience as a class. So I won't start from scratch, because the first classes are slightly easier. You will feel, oh, this is too easy. I'll take a topic from between so that you feel that, okay, this is something, am I up for it or not? That's the whole idea. So these classes are more for you to know, just 1 hour. I think 1 hour is sufficient for you to know that, okay, am I up for it? Second one, we'll have the next week, that is next to next week on 20th, again 1 hour, same time. We'll have some topic from IR. This people are generally interested in that, right? So the real concern is this, because this will be slightly new to you, and also some IR topic. We'll see that as well. So that is it from my side. If you have any queries, concerns, let me know, and doubts. Feel free. Any queries, any doubts? Online people, yes. Varsha, Veera, Pavan. Any queries or concerns if you have? In the meantime, what you can do? In the meantime, what you can do is you can start studying, or at least purchase those NCERT books. This is something that you can do, right? Purchasing those NCERT books. You can just write down the names of those NCERT books. So all these books are the class 11th and 12th NCERT books, right? So the very first book is Political Theory. If you remember, I had told you to read the book in my polity class also. Now the time has come for you to read the book, actually. Okay, so that book is called Political Theory, class 11th. Political Theory, class 11th. Then one book is Politics in India Since Independence. That's a class 12th NCERT book. Politics in India Since Independence. Okay. And third one is Contemporary World Politics. Contemporary World Politics, a class 12th NCERT book. Okay, so you can purchase them, and till we don't have the class, that is till 15th of September, I would expect you to just go through these books so that we cover, you cover these books. These are very basic in nature. Now, as far as other books are concerned, say like Andrew Haywood, O.P. Goba, not right now. Okay, and if somebody is interested in purchasing any such book, you can purchase this book by Andrew Haywood. Please write. That book is called Political Theory, an Introduction. Political Theory, an Introduction. This is by Andrew Haywood. So you have multiple editions of this book. Now we have the 4th edition. So prefer purchasing the 4th edition only. That's the latest one that we have in the market available. The 4th edition. Okay. One more book by the same author is called Political Ideologies. So first was Political Theory. Second is Political Ideologies. Ideologies. Same author, Andrew Haywood. Right? Again, this is a 7th edition book, so you can purchase this 7th edition one. Then two books that you might find slightly difficult to read on your own, but then once we explain topics, it will be easy. One is Indian Political Thought by O.P. Goba. Indian Political Thought, O.P. Goba. And the other is Western Political Thought. Western Political Thought. Okay, same author, O.P. Goba. That should be it. And this is all, of course, going to be for paper 1, section A. Now for section B, I don't see the need for any book. The typical Lakshmikant and all are going to be sufficient. The polity notes that we have are sufficient, beyond which class notes are enough. So even these books don't jump to purchase them one by one, slowly and steadily. Once you've read the NCERTs and till 15th of September, if you have less GS classes and you have covered GS properly, then maybe you can give it a read, starting with Political Ideologies. That should be your book to purchase. You can just go through that book in case you want to, various ideologies, rough idea. Even if you don't, You are losing nothing. I'll explain those things anyway. Don't worry. Right? As far as IR is concerned, you can just mention. Now see, for IR, we have one Global Politics by Andrew Haywood. You can mention there. Global Politics. Global Politics. Andrew Haywood. Third edition. And more book is the globalization of world politics. The globalization of world politics. So this is by John Baylis, B-A-Y-L-I-S, John Baylis. And two other authors are there. So this is the 9th edition. Don't forget to take the 9th edition. And for global politics, the 3rd edition. Okay. As far as Indian foreign policy is concerned, I mean, it is very difficult to have a book which will keep you up to date. That is where you rely on class notes. But recently, a book by Rajiv Sikri came out. You can just purchase the book. That will be good for anyone, even if you don't take PSIR optional. That is a great book to read anyway. That is called Strategic Conundrums. You can just write Rajiv Sikri Foreign Policy. Okay, Reshaping India's Foreign Policy is the book. Reshaping India's Foreign Policy. Rajiv Sikri. His book was very popular, the previous one. So this is also a pretty decent book. Okay. And then for very standard information that you would want, we have Indian Foreign Policy. That is by Harish Pant. But this book was from 2019. So you might not have very up-to-date information. Okay. So Indian Foreign Policy, Harish Pant. I think the last edition that they had was 2019 one. But then this would give you some more static information on what things, how things have been so far. Clear? And Rajiv Sikri's book is pretty decent one, right? You won't have to purchase Does the Elephant Dance and all now. This would suffice. So these would be the books that you can purchase if you want to. If somebody is insistent that no, I need to have those books on my shelf to take a nice selfie and post on Instagram, then yes, these would make you like appear like a sincere aspirant. Okay. Beyond that, there is no limit to how many books you can purchase. Clear? So now, if you have further questions, if you want to ask me anything on this, or you have your own concerns, no doubts? Aji, no doubts?
What about the dynamic part of the syllabus? Is it
dynamic part? Dynamic part comes in primarily IR, and the point is that it's not tricky, but you'll have to know things. So sometimes having an information vacuum could be a concern. Though it would not be that they will ask you something just 2 months back. No. It is always contemporary. And this is the advantage in knowing something in depth, is that you don't have to always up-to-date yourself with information. Not required. Once you have a grasp on the origin of the story, how the foreign policy is shaped between, say, India and Israel, etc., you don't have to up-to-date yourself on a daily basis. Okay. But yes, if there is a new term that has come up, if there is something new that you need to know, then yes. Otherwise, this daily update thing, not really. Not at all. We'll be covering anyway, as far as the current aspect is concerned for IR, we'll be covering that anyway. But it's not tricky. How well you understand this aspect as well as these is what it depends on. Once you know once you grasp the basics of this, that okay, I understand the relationship, how it comes from, what were the sources, etc. It is very easy to update yourself with information. No daily information is required. Right? To give you a simple example, think of any person who is teaching for this subject. Do you think the faculty for these subjects are studying on a daily basis? Of course not. Right? Do you think a polity or an economics teacher is studying on a daily basis? Not really. And in most cases, you just have to look at the article and get to know what exactly is going to happen and what is mentioned there. Right? And this is something that comes with knowing the basics. Once your basics are strong, no, not tricky, but yes, we'll have to have basics strong. That's there. Any other issue?
So would you suggest any websites or documents to follow?
Documentary is not as such right now. Website you can follow, say, Raisena 22 is great. But again, my point is right now, if we, let's say, read those websites and those articles, they might feel too complicated for us. So, nothing specific for now, but then ORF and IDSA is something we'll start following once we cover certain topics for IR. Right? For this, it is all static, nothing unique. Once you get, that's why once you get to know this, you can use this information in your this paper, GS paper 2, 1, essay, etc. What is required is this. But for that, we have to have some conceptual clarity on those basics. Beyond that, Project 9 and as I said, Raisena 22 or then ORF, IDSA, there are dozens of them which are very good. But then those articles might seem overwhelming. And I don't want you to feel, oh, this is too complicated. So firstly, those basics, and then I will constantly be giving you the printout or maybe referring to that, please read the article. It has come out on this subject, this topic, etc. So that is something I keep on doing it because they also have a very good point of view on certain things. So we incorporate them in the class. And that is my responsibility. Every article that is published, which is of great value for exam, I'll mention it for you. In most cases, I will have some kind of a summary of it and give it to you also. That's how it is. In fact, that is what we will cover as a part of our dynamics section of IR. Okay. So all that you have to do is put in the effort, not just in the class, but go home and study. And that is the real challenge. The real challenge is not this, but self-study, just like your GS paper. And what else? No doubts. So should that be it for today? Okay, so let's end our discussion here only. So next week we'll be meeting at same time 4 to 5 next Sunday, and we'll have some topic discussion on some topic from political science that will help you understand, is this subject within your league or of your interest or not? Because I don't want you to genuinely just come because of GS overlap, because this is the singular biggest reason why people choose PSIR, GS overlap. But that's a good reason, not good enough sometimes if you don't have the knack for it at all. So this would be for you as well to test whether, okay, this seems okay. And if you are okay, then that's great. Clear? So let's meet on, today is the 6th, 13th, 4 to 5, same time. Okay, that's all for me. And online people, okay, yes, we have some query here. Veera, something about daily updation of notes and newspaper reading. Veera, daily updation of notes, not really. Also, not at all for newspaper. Again, as I said, I will, once I start the classes, I'll keep on telling you on which articles to read, both from Indian Express as well as on these websites. And then you can follow those articles. But I would prefer that we firstly, for the first 2 months, focus on political science. Once you start IR, you get the clear hang of basics, then I will tell you, and please read those articles only. Don't read anything else. Most of those articles which will be there will be highly political in nature, won't provide any information, but some would be great by renowned authors who are not biased, and that will have a more neutral perspective. So we have to be very selective in what we gather as information with respect to the newspaper also. Clear? So no over zealous attitude of going through every article. Most articles have little to contribute and also nothing new in terms of a perspective also. Okay. So that's it. Let's meet then next week. Till then, that is all for me. Jai Hind.